Hey everybody, and welcome back to Tax Sale Insiders. Once again, I am Rachel Seidensticker, the COO of Tax Sale Resources, here with Brian Seidensticker, my brother, but also the CEO of Tax Sale Resources. Hey, Brian.
Hi, Rachel. How's it going?
Good. I'm great. I'm excited for today. I want you to kind of get us started. We kind of chatted about doing this a little differently today. So why don't you tell our listeners and our viewers how we're going to go about the big state of Oklahoma today?
Yeah, well, not that you just it stole all of my thunder, but we were asked about Oklahoma, and quite frankly, Rachel and I looked at each other like neither one of us knew a whole lot about Oklahoma. So format today is going to be a little different. We went out and did some research. We're going to talk through what we found in Oklahoma, and hopefully it gives you guys a better jumping off point, going forward. But it certainly wasn't a situation where Rachel nor I felt comfortable being the quote unquote expert to give you information. So I guess disclaimer up front, this is what we found. This has not been vetted by an attorney. We are not attorneys, nor have I interviewed an attorney in Oklahoma yet. So this is definitely just based on our research, but hopefully, again, gets you heading in the right direction. So anyhow, yeah. You sent over kind of a list of the questions that we'd been sent, right? And I figure we can just talk through these and I don't know, I'll say verbally vomit on our listeners of what we found.
I mean, they might not appreciate it. Maybe they will. We'll see. I think the big one is, as always, kind of defining Oklahoma as what kind of sale it is. I think we have a good grasp on that. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I guess I knew and I verified that I did know the answer to that one. Is as being it is a deed auction, right? And so you are bidding at these properties to buy the property. So we definitely got that one out of the way. That was an easy. So all right, what's the next one? Do you have
I wasn't sure if I got this, but is it administrative or a judicial process?
Well, from what I found, it was administrative.
Okay.
Because I did see in several places that they are stating that you do have to go through a quiet title after the fact in order to get insurable title. And so it's definitely an administrative foreclosure, not a judicial foreclosure, which is pretty common in most of the U.S.
Yeah, it is, for sure. Well, I guess, how did you see any basics on how it worked? Like just how the deed sales themselves worked?
Well, I got a little bit of conflicting information when initially it was, and this may be just a difference in timing, because I've seen this in other states too, where historically it was more of a round robin, right? It was first person, first come, first serve type of thing. And if multiple people, they put your name in a hat and drew it out. But I'm sure as you can imagine today, trying to do that for a lot of properties, it's logistically got to be a nightmare. So what I found in actually talking to or going to a couple county sites to dig into how it actually functions is it doesn't do that at all. It is truly a bidding process. You got to register ahead of time. You show up, and it may be the only time I've heard of you actually getting a paddle. So typically the auctions that I've been to or have been aware of, your paddle's your hand. And in Oklahoma, it sounds like you literally get a paddle to raise, and so you can be official. So the process wise, I think it's more like a standard auction than a round robin like it may have been in the past.
At the point, yeah. And I saw obviously all the sales. So they have several different types of sales. So we're speaking specifically to the deed sale, which they call resale tax sale. So just note that out there. There's I know they have obviously their normal mortgage foreclosure and some other second offer and a lot of the OTCs are struck to the county, so they might have another sale with those versus just being held and you call in. So just be sure you're keeping track of that when you're looking for lists out there. All the sales are held the second Monday of June for our particular resale tax sale deed sale that we're talking about.
Right.
FYI. Now I saw something different. I saw paddle, but you made mention of you have to pre-register. And I'm not seeing that everywhere, just so you know. I'm seeing sometimes you can pre-register in advance, meaning you can go into the treasurer or send information to the treasurer before the day of sale. In some cases, or a handful that I found today, where an hour beforehand, you actually, get your registration in, which is a quick little sign in, basically. And there's not a lot required for your registration process, which I thought was interesting. Some states that's pretty lengthy, and what you have to bring in for your registration. I did find, though, if in some counties, so be aware of this, that if you're representing a company, there might be some nuance there, meaning if you're sending a bidder that's not part of your company, you might have some nuance. I'm not seeing that across the board, but just something to keep aware of. So it's just different,
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, pretty standard. Counties will do things slightly different, but in general, there's not let's see, Missouri, is it Missouri, where you got to be registered in that state or have a representative in that state. And in most states, so it's not like that. And in most states, you at least have to have your company registered in that state to do business. Sounds like in Oklahoma, at least what I found, is as long as you're registered in the United States, right, then you're pretty safe. And so there's some less restrictions on that front.
I agree. Yeah. I also saw, you get a lot of states like Ohio where you have to have a certain percentage, that you deposit, and then the rest is due later. And sounds like across the board, and I think you might have something counter that, but I found that you need to come in with that money day of, and have cashier's checks. I even had a county today say that they want cash, which seems, I actually told them they were kind of crazy, because that feels like a lot of cash everyone's helping around.
I've seen that. I've also heard stories of the guys that come in with that type of level of cash, how they get it. But that's beside the point. But yeah, I know. I guess I did find it was interesting because I hadn't seen this term used before. But it was like you can send money to be held in trust, right? Which was I hadn't seen before. So it's not like you like. In most auctions, right, it's if there is a deposit, right, it's a percentage of what you potentially bid, right, or there's no deposit, right, and you're responsible to bring either all the cash or wire shortly thereafter the amount that's due. This is the first time I was like, just wire us a bunch of money, we'll hold it in trust, and if you spend it, great. If you don't, we'll send it back. I'm sure that varies by county widely, at least in the county that I was looking at. They did say it would be sent back within a week. So it's not like they're going to hold on to it for 6 months. So that's nice, right? Especially if you're doing this, as from a large institutional or, doing it and not planning on attending yourself. It gives you some flexibility there, for sure.
Yeah. And I had it doesn't have to be wire. You can send in the cashier's check with the trust. You're right. That was kind of a unique, interesting process. You're kind of obviously still guessing what you're going to be bidding, and then hoping that will be enough to cover it. Because we don't allow for payments after the sale. I did see that payments must be made day of sale, whether that's your money in the trust or you're bringing in cashier's checks. Some counties do allow cashier's checks day of, or cash if you go that route. That makes me nervous.
Did you I didn't see any where it was like, hey, go get a cashier's check after the fact and bring it. Like
I did see one that if you left a personal check guarantee, basically, and then left and you had like 2 hours or something to come back and pay. So that was a nuance that was there. Obviously that's research on what bank's available, right? And making sure that's set up for you.
Yeah.
But
that's well, I guess the one I found was it was due at the auction, and they explicitly said you couldn't go get, you couldn't leave the auction and come back. So, right, if you're attending, definitely do your research in that particular county. It can vary, but it's not normal. Like, I always think of like Georgia, it's pretty standard. You win, and then you can go get a cashier's check and bring it back by whatever time in the day. But it sounds like that's not normal in Oklahoma.
Yeah, but I think you captured some of that. But I mean, they're all live. Not seeing anything online, right? They're all live. There's some nuance to how you have to pay. or how you can pay. For the most part, you can send a bidder as a representative. So I think some of those things are fairly standard and safe, and all the sales, like I said, are on the same day. So those are some like logistical things to consider as far as how they work across the state. So do your work.
I know they're all on June 10th this year. Are they always on the 10th or that first Monday of the
Second
month?
Monday, I believe. Second
Monday.
Monday is what I was reading. And based on, when I looked, it sounds like that's actually the case in the past too, is it's always the second Monday of June. Now I say that more and more you'll get a straggler here and there, and I would need to kind of look into our database and see if there's stragglers in the past. But it looks like all the dates are pretty well populated on the 10th of this year. So.
Okay, that's what I saw too. It seems that they're all on the same date. So I guess the only other state I'm aware of that does it quite that strictly is Iowa, where it's all on the same day. So logistically, as investors kind of think about that, it's not like you're going to be able to go from one auction to the next auction and attend 5 auctions over the course of a month. You got to have your stuff together that day, right? Including all the funds, right? So there's some challenges there. Now, that's challenges on one end, opportunities on the other, because that's going to limit competition.
True. Especially when they're live like they are. Yep, 100%. Well, let's move through some of our other questions. We've got some, like legalese questions, and I think this is a great one for you, Brian. Just like, where is Oklahoma falling in the Tyler versus Hennepin? Because it's a bid up premium state. It's a deed sale. So where is it falling in PCF's pursuit, I guess. So, or PLF.
PLF. Yeah, I guess I haven't. Everything that I know of what Tyler Hennepin, again, I'm not an attorney and I'm not an expert, that has read that ruling, word for word. But as far as the general requirements coming out of there was that there has to be there has to be a sale. The sale, if there generates, excess funds, needs to be available to the previous owner. As far as the way the sale occurs, it's a sale of the property, right? There's nothing there that indicates that the Tyler Hennepin would affect that at all. Whether or not, I don't know whether or not those funds are available to prior lien holders, right, or the previous owner, which is a big component of the Tyler Hennepin case. I haven't seen Oklahoma as being highlighted as an issue state, and so I would assume that they've done their homework and decided that it's not a problem. And so long story short, I don't anticipate the process changing the sale process changing a whole lot due to Tyler Hennepin as I know it today anyway.
Okay. Well, that's, I think, probably good news for investors for the most part, because then there's not that Harry-Carry interim, what's going to happen this year versus next year, how do parcels fall in that? So that's, I would think a good comfort for people. So,
yeah.
Did you find any? I didn't find any so far, but any kind of weird laws or regulations around the deed sales that would be different from another state?
No, nothing that stuck out as weird other than that whole, funds in trust thing, which isn't really a statute wise. They were pretty clear. I think I mentioned this already of the deed that you're getting isn't a warranty deed. It's a buyer beware, right? This is all pretty standard for tax sale stuff, right? And then they, even went on to, state that you have to go through a quiet title action, right, in order to get insurable title after the fact. So just know that that's pretty standard, but be prepared for that. And you're not just going to go buy this property, turn around and sell it on the open market with insurable title. You don't have that luxury.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I think the one that's kind of good to cover here, obviously Tax Sale Resources is populating all the sales and the sale lists and so forth. If you're out there hunting and pecking online, finding the tax sale listings, deed sales, there is one site called the oktaxrules.com that populates some of the counties and gives you a quick access to county websites, just so everyone knows. But doesn't necessarily mean that county website has the tax sale list. So I feel like that's where we help out, because we can go, we're doing our own hunting and pecking and put it in one spot for everybody as far as getting their tax sale list. So yeah. Covered our registration, preparing. Anything that you could see as far as like extra due diligence, just talking about research and due diligence concerns that we should probably keep in mind or people should keep in mind for
No,
Oklahoma?
no, I mean, nothing out of the norm, right? I mean, we talk about this all the time, but in one of the counties I found, they had some pretty explicit language of, there's definitely, federal IRS type liens, municipal fines and liens that will remain open, right? And so that stuff is not going to get wiped out, right? And so keep that stuff in mind as you're underwriting these. What I don't know, right, and I always use kind of Florida as an example where municipal fines are used a lot, right? Where you got to worry about the amounts on those versus other states where you might have them, but they're not going to be detrimental to an investment decision. That's probably a better way to put it. In Florida, they can be detrimental to an investment decision because it can take a house and turn it upside down because of the amount of those fines, potential amount of those fines. Most states, that's not the case. I don't know how Oklahoma is. I would guess that it's not going to be detrimental, but you would definitely need to look into that prior to investing a lot, right? And make sure that isn't the case.
Makes sense. Yeah, I didn't see anything pop up. I had someone make a comment that isn't Oklahoma in Tornado Alley, but I'm sorry, everyone, we do not have tornado.
We don't
We
have
don't collect that environmental hazard information. So it just felt like maybe an Oklahoma concern in general.
Where you the whole state and say, yes, there is tornado potential everywhere.
Exactly. Warning. But I didn't see anything different. I feel like it's your typical due diligence, looking for, all of your normal, things, environmental, flood. I don't know how big flooding is there, but, just keep an eye on your normal due diligence, pieces. You have any value? How are values looking in Oklahoma, do you think, overall?
Well, we'll probably dive in a little bit into my non-expertise here because I am not an expert in the Oklahoma real estate market. I did, since sales are coming up, I did go take a quick look just to see, is all this vacant land and worthless? Is there anything of value? I would say and it's probably the advantage of having one sale a year. There's quite a bit, right? And a pretty large array of different types of properties and values. Now, which markets you might want to be in versus others that you don't, I don't know that either. But it's not. I guess the short answer is it's not all worthless vacant land. There seem to be some very good potentials, and how much of that's going to redeem prior to the auction, I didn't dig quite that deep. But there's certainly properties of value worth buying if they make it to auction.
Well, I mean, I think that's good because it's, you want to make sure the trip, especially since there's a live sale, is worthwhile. So that's a good thing. Let's see. We'll move on. Let's talk bidding strategies. I think that's always something we try to be careful about, but can you think of anything in Oklahoma that might be different from other parts of the country?
No, none other than what we do. Nothing that we haven't already mentioned. The fact that they all happen on the same day is a big snag in bidding strategies, obviously, right? And they're all live auctions. That's another snag, right? If you're planning, but as far as, and then also, you got to bring your cash with you at least all the ones that I looked at. I think you said the same thing. You got to have your cash that day. So it's not like you can kind of, plan on, well, if I'm not successful here, I'll just allocate it to somewhere else, right? You got to be, there with the cash that you have on hand. So, definitely stuff to kind of keep in mind. But also, on the other hand, is like all of those barriers, should make opportunities, more abundant there than some of the more competitive states like Florida, etc., California, that sort of thing.
Hey, I think this might be good. There's a question like, what happens after the winning bid, right after you win it? We kind of talked about your amount is due, and then they get you, hey, you've won, but then you have to go through that quiet title action.
Yeah.
Why don't we just talk about quiet title really fast? What does that mean, especially for investors who, maybe they're just getting started? So,
sure. Again, I'm not an attorney, so this is, after interviewing several attorneys and getting a lot better understanding of how the title insurance space works. I'll share my 2 cents on how it all comes together, because really the whole insurable title thing is to get title insurance, right? And why do people care about title insurance? Well, it's because banks, lenders require title insurance. That's how they know that nobody else is going to come out of the blue and say, wait a minute, that's my property, right? Right. And then the bank is like, oh crap, if it's not your property, Joe, who's this guy, right? And how am I getting my money back, Joe, if this guy actually owns it, right? That's what the bank's concern is. And so they say, as long as they can get title insurance, then that's all I care about from a lender perspective. So the title insurance guys are ultimately calling the shots, because it's not like the bank is saying you have to go through a quiet title. It's the title insurance guys that are saying, hey, the only way that I'm going to issue title insurance on this property is if you do X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z happens to, in most cases, in tax sale world, typically is a quiet title action or something similar to that, right? And so what the quiet title action is, a legal process. So in states where it's an administrative foreclosure, the county is doing it, right? And in some state, like Florida is another example, it's an administrative foreclosure. They're doing all the process that an attorney would do, right? But it's not a proceeding that's overseen by a judge, right? And so the fact that the quiet title action is the process of getting a list of all interested parties done through a title search, notifying all of those interested parties, giving them a chance to come forward and make a claim with this, the timeline that's required from a statute's perspective. At the end of the day, if nobody comes forward, right, then the judge will say, okay, well, this person officially owns the property. Nobody else has claimed interest. And so their ability to claim interest is, I'll say, gone away, right? There might be some legal nuance to go away, but again, I'm not an attorney. And so that quiet title being complete is basically saying, okay, the owner, which is the winning bidder, is now the rightful owner of that property. Now they've got, their little certificate that they, what they need to go to the title insurance company to say, I can get, I've got this, right? And the title insurance company says, okay, great, I'll give you a title insurance company. And then you got the lender that says, okay, great, I'll give you, lending. So it's kind of this trickle down effect, right? Chain reaction of why you have to do the quiet title in order to be able to sell it to a third party, because more often than not, that third party is using bank lending, and the bank is requiring title insurance, and the title insurance companies are requiring the quiet title action. So there's the long story that I've been many years of interviewing before that ever clicked in my head. So I don't know if that clicked in anybody else's head, but that's
I think it's great. I mean, I think it's really good information. I think it's excellent information. Also, I think really important sideline that I'm going to bring in here is I did read in, and I'm going to quote this because it just came to mind. If a property is redeemed during the sale or prior to deed being filed, the sale is null and void, and a full refund will be made to the buyer. So that's a really important thing. This was in Canadian County. Something probably to note, because that redemption, there's not like a redemption period, right? But until you have your deed, that current owner can come in and make good, and you get all your money back. So I think that's super important, because some states, that redemption period that is done on day of sale, and they don't have that opportunity. And in some places there's a redemption period post sale, like Georgia and Texas, and it sounds like in Oklahoma it's not really a period, but there is a time. So the sooner you file your quiet title action, the sooner you secure your asset. That's really the thing to keep in mind. So,
well, now it's a good nuance there, but you said until the deed is recorded, right? Or do you say until the quiet title action was complete?
Let me make sure that I read this correctly again. Let me make sure. The sale, prior to deed being filed.
Okay, and then so I think so. That's a nuance, right? But I think that confirms what I was thinking as you were mentioning it. Is there's two different things, right? There's the deed being recorded, which is something the county's doing after you win, right?
Correct.
I mean, and I think people in general have the expectation that I won this property today and it's mine, right? But in most states, that's not the case, because there's still a process the county has to go to actually record that deed. And in most states, they leave the opportunity for the previous owner to come, like you said, make things right with the county, and then they'll reverse the whole sale if they do, right, up until the day that deed is recorded, right? Kind of like a redemption period, but you don't have to have the quiet title done in order to record the deed. That's something that the county is doing. So there's And I'm sure it varies by county, how long that process takes. That would also be maybe a good question to ask counties, is how long does it typically take for deeds to be recorded? And hopefully they're honest, right? I think in general, 30 to 60 days is reasonable, right? Don't expect it to be the next day. I've never seen that to be a real thing. But I've also heard there's some states where they're very uninvestor friendly, and it might be 6 months to a year before any of that stuff happens. And that you need to account for that timeline if that's the case. So just ask the county and make sure that they at least tell you what it should be before you go down there and spend money, and then 6 months later don't have a deed, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
So
and always remember, until you have a deed, you can't do anything with the property. Like, that's pretty standard across the country. So until you have the deed, you can't do anything to the property and make any motion. Because of that reason too, is in most places they're letting the owner have time, be able to redeem at that point. So let's see, I guess moving on, maybe just returns. Do you have any comments on maximizing returns for investments? I think standard as you would across the country, right? You decide what you're gonna do.
And we get that question a lot, and that was the one, when we got this list of questions, it was kind of like, there's so many different models out there. There's no way of saying this is what you got to do, or at least I don't ever feel comfortable doing that. But whatever your model is, right, make sure you account for it, right? And if it's selling it as is, right, with insurable title, that's one. If you're wanting to do the remodel, go for it, right? We are a huge proponent of improving communities, so certainly believe wholeheartedly in the folks that are going to buy the properties and then either do the remodel themselves or work with somebody that's going to do that remodel. But that's an opinion thing. That's not an investment recommendation thing. But so there's certainly opportunity. The fact that you're buying a deed, right, then it gives you any opportunity that you would typically have with real estate.
Makes sense. Do you feel like our program would work pretty well actually in Oklahoma, don't you think?
Yeah, or our accelerator program on the capital partnership programs that it wasn't initially built for Oklahoma, but the process there is one that is perfectly suited, to utilize. So, and that might, the fact that all the sales happen on the same day, and you might be stretched thin on the capital that you have to maybe go to a couple different auctions. That's exactly where we can come in and help, right? And I didn't necessarily have that in mind when we built the program, but it's a very good solution for that scenario.
Indeed. For sure. Indeed. Yeah. And if anyone wants to get into that or has questions, just reach out to our support and we'll get you lined out there. So, well, let's see. I feel like we've kind of touched on everything. You see any questions that I've left, since we haven't really worked with any investors directly or have done any interviews with attorneys, that real life case study is up in the air. So I apologize. We don't have anything, but that's why Brian said, hey, let's do this a little differently today. I said, okay, works for me. So,
I'd say high level stuff. There's, from an investor perspective that I really like, right? I'm always I've always said, and I can prove this in data all day long, right? The live auctions typically have better deals because the competition is not the same. And live auctions with other barriers folded in there, like having all the sales in the same day, really makes it hard for folks with a lot of capital to participate. And so all those things should point toward the ability to find deals. So from an investor perspective, if you can find a market, that's the one thing I don't know, right, is what the actual markets in Oklahoma look like. Are they going to be like a Miami or an LA or a Denver? Right, probably not, right? But I'm sure there's real estate markets within Oklahoma that are great to be in. And so if you can find those markets, the chances of finding deals there, I'd say are good, right? So that's not to say don't do your homework, don't dive in head first, dive in feet first, know what you're doing, and be ready for the curveballs as they come, right? But there's some good indicators saying Oklahoma might be a great place to look.
Awesome. Well, I don't think we have anything else to kind of lend at this point. I feel like, as always, give it a try. You never know, don't Don't invest it all, but dip your toe in, as I think you said. So, and see where it takes you. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. This is well, yeah. Apologies if anybody's expecting the expert interview on this. Hopefully, this gets you the information you're looking for the folks that were asking for it in a little different format. And this was kind of fun, Rachel. We should do this again.
Yeah, it's kind of nice just to have the back and forth, and I reminds everyone we do our best, but we don't know it all, and it's you learn as you go in this industry all the time. So
I know more now. I know more now than when we received the questions and kind of went,
That's
I don't
true.
know.
So true. So true. All right, Brian. Well, thanks. And to all of you out there, happy investing. Good luck with your investment ventures, and we'll see you back here next time on Tax Sale Insiders. Thanks, Brian.
Sounds great. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, everybody. Good luck.